Trust and everything. Here we go. Howdy, everybody. Welcome to Step into the Portal. My name is the Brandt, and I'm excited to talk My Hero Academia card game because it's been a little while on the channel since we'd covered anything. And Set 4 League of Villains is on the verge of releasing, kind of pre-release end of February and release in March. But actually, what I'm really excited about is I have the Hero League champion here, Kevin Broberg, with me. Kevin, how are you?
Hey, I'm feeling good.
It's awesome to have you. I'm sad you don't have your balloons. I watched your other interview, so I put a balloon behind me too.
I actually do have the balloons. So they're
all right.
Yeah, mixed quality, but they're still hanging out here.
So what was it, about a week and a half ago? The championship was in Las Vegas, right? Las Vegas, Nevada.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. So it's Tuesday right now. So yeah, a week and a half. Yeah, I think we started the Hero League Championship kind of proper started on Saturday and then went through Sunday. And they had brought us out for kind of like the media day interviews you see on the stream and stuff like that. Starting on, I think some folks came out on Tuesday even. They're really starting in earnest on Thursday.
Nice. So yeah, they did on Friday. They did a like a premiere, a Set 4 premiere. Was that kind of the big thing?
Yeah, the world premiere sealed that was really awesome. Yeah, and all the competitors got in, and then it was also open to everyone else who wanted to buy a ticket for it to the public. And so we had, there were a ton of it really, I think, elevated the whole experience, and there were a lot more people there spectating and then playing other side events over the weekend.
Nice. So did you play in that?
I did get to play in the sealed.
And what villain did you end up playing?
I picked Kurogiri, so kind of thematic. I stepped into the portals.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Think with portals.
Nice, nice. And that's a Kurogiri too, because we already have a promo Kurogiri, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, they're remarkably. It's kind of remarkably how similar and different they are, really. Because one's a 7-hand size, but one's a 5-hand size. But it's like a very fake 5-hand size, and they both have a lot of tricks to them. So it's really cool.
Nice. And then Saturday was like a Swiss. There were 32 competitors, right? 32 people in the championship. So Saturday was a 5-round Swiss, I assume, because 2 to the 5th is 32.
Yeah. So yeah,
as a mathematician, that's how I'm thinking.
Yeah, your classic Swiss structure, where it's structured so there's enough rounds so there'll be one undefeated player at the end of it, and then everyone else can kind of get into some natural kind of bands of separation. And yeah, it was a really interesting. The overall format was very, very unique, very interesting. I've never played in anything. I can't even say quite like that. Anything remotely in the same territory as that. So day one was that Swiss tournament where you just showed up with the deck and you got paired for 5 rounds. Everyone got to play against a player with a similar record, right? As it goes. Like if you got a draw, you got paired into a draw bracket. You get one, you play against the other winners until finally. I was fortunate enough to win a whole bunch, and then I got paired into another player who had 4 wins. And we just said we're going to intentionally draw and be the number 1 and 2 seed. Because on day 2, on Sunday, everyone advanced to Sunday, but they were seeded based on their finish in the Swiss bracket. So if you had a losing record, you'd be the lower seed, and you'd be going second all day. And that's kind of a reward for doing well in Swiss, that you got to be player 1 on day 2. But also, what made it really unique wasn't just that it was a 32-player bracket into a 32-player bracket, or a 32-player Swiss into a 32-player bracket, and the bracket was fixed, so we knew, the winner of this match plays the winner of that match. We also got to change our decks after day 1, which
right, yes, because you played Eraserhead day 1, if I remember correctly, right?
Yep, that's right. Yeah, so I kind of charted out Eraser in advance. Like I like Eraserhead, I like what Eraserhead's doing, and this kind of open. Ojiro. Ojiro's a scary character, terrifying character. And I said, let me have this guy to screw over those guys and be competitive into everyone else. And then on day 2, maybe they'll be afraid of the Ojiro, and so they'll do something else. And I said, I'll switch. I'll be Midnight to, I don't know. She felt like a good day 2 character.
Yeah. So Midnight ended up being your character, and actually, funny enough, so it was before you won. I turned in my loyalty points, and I just decided to redeem, kind of going back. I have my seizing the advantages. I have a lot of the Set 3 stuff, but I don't have a lot of the Set 1 stuff. So I decided to go back and get a couple of those characters, including Midnight. and it says that she's supposed to arrive today, but I checked my mailbox and she's not here yet. But I'm supposed to get my midnight character. My locals is actually tonight, although I'm going to see the Yukon Huskies basketball.
Okay.
They're playing basketball tonight, and my brother invited me to the game, so I won't be at my locals tonight. I was thinking of sneaking over extra because honestly, college basketball is only like an hour and a half, hour 45 minutes. It's not like baseball that can go on for 4 hours, you know.
Yeah.
And it's pretty local. I just have to go to Hartford. It's a quick jaunt. So, but I don't think I'll make my way over. So I may try to show up with some kind of midnight deck next week and check her out, because I played against Midnight, but I've never played as Midnight. So
Yeah,
what was your thought process on that?
Well, I mean, really, my thought process on choosing Midnight was just that I kind of ripped off some of the guts of it from Pippa, who played at Nationals and got a top 32 finish with her. And had a very thrilling she got beat on stream in a round of 32, which he ended up losing, unfortunately, to Kirishima, but put on put on some spectacle, put on some stuff in that match. And then I pulled that deck down, I ripped off that deck, built that for locals, played it a little bit, made some tweaks, made some changes, and really kind of, I had been looking at Midnight for a long time, because when the set was previewed, I saw Friend of Animals that says, when I'm committed, give you 2 more speed. And then when I'm play well committed, I can turn into another momentum. And one of my loves in this game, in the whole My Hero format, has always been home run combat. And making my home run combats actually hit people is very hard, because it's a relatively slow attack. And it's also kind of telegraphed. But I saw Midnight puts a ton of speed on this, and like exponential speed with Friend of Animals. It's a really good friend for Friend of Animals. But then if my whole deck is just home run combat, then that's a little bit too predictable. And Pippa's deck solved that by adding kind of the Tokoyami package, the Summon Dark Shadow, the Dark. I said, wow, this is really compelling now. It's got some legs on it. And then we have Brandt to locals. Actually, I told the story on Sam's podcast, but I tell the story about it. It's awesome. I had been playing for like a month or two with it, and had lent it out to a couple different people at our locals, and they would go 3-0 with it, and I would go 3-0 with it. And it was kind of crushing our local tournaments, which granted weren't necessarily like everyone like figuring out the last 4 cards in their hyper tuned Ojiro decks, but they weren't. Right. It was no slouch either. And I remember one week where I played my Eraserhead deck and played into Midnight and just tore my hair out for half an hour before getting completely bodied. It's just a hard deck to beat, and that's a very good property to have in a deck. And it held its own against Ojiro, held its own against everything I could throw at it. And I couldn't think of something that really exploited it, really something that would like have a grossly lopsided matchup against it. And that's really kind of just the genesis of why I chose that deck. I just liked it a lot. It was just very, very strong.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things I try to tell people, because, kind of playing My Hero at our store or talking to other people about the game, and obviously Magic is kind of the centerpiece, right? Like, people love it or hate it. It's the centerpiece of the CCG world.
And so it's always like,
yeah, exactly. What's different? What is it? And it's like all constructed, CCGs, whatever, require you to build consistent decks. That's the sum of it. But for some reason, My Hero is even more looking for that inconsistency. I think because of that consistency, because those checks are inconsistent, right? There isn't an amazing way you can guarantee that your checks will be consistent.
It's such an interesting, just the topic of consistency in the My Hero card game is so like it's so hard to actually tease out, right? Because on one hand, there's all this inconsistency in your control checks. You can never predict your control checks. And at the same time, you're also drawing so many cards. So in Magic, you always build a deck. Like people are like excited to play Serum Powder in some formats. It says you can trash your entire opening hand, just throw it out of the room, just to get an extra mulligan. That might be permanent resources you're losing, but you just need your one card. And you're willing to sacrifice anything to get that one card. And it's almost blasphemy to play 61 cards in your deck, because that's making all your chance of drawing any one card that much lower, even just for your dual lands. But in My Hero, you can if you build a deck with 4 of a card and say my game plan revolves around drawing like Recipro Burst, right? For instance, the only problem with that strategy is that isn't that you won't draw Recipro Burst in some games. It'll happen, but very rarely. The problem is that your opponent can counter your Recipro Burst,
right? And
that if you're too predictable, there's so much counterplay available, but they're not necessarily like cards they're going to play 4 of. So it's really hard to tease apart, because you see everyone playing. Few people play 50 card decks in My Hero. Most people embrace the inconsistency and the greater options, kind of like the greater range really of options, right? It's about having, consistency is like, doing the same thing every time. But then the opposite of that is variance, of having different things happening at different times and different draws available to you. And I don't know, it's really hard to tease out in a coherent fashion, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoy like when you can make a deck. And actually, I want to acknowledge that we are live. So if people are with us and they want to ask questions, feel free to go ahead and do that, and we will answer any questions, or Kevin can answer questions for you, and
Yeah.
I can wave my hands around. But please do, or just say hello in the chat if you're there as well. But I love making decks where it's like I don't have a single-minded focus, right? I'm not, like you're saying, like I'm not putting 4 reciprocal bursts and then saying I'm going to build momentum and then I'm going to toss all that momentum to win the game. And not necessarily because I don't want my opponent to counter it, although definitely in locals, people will get used to like, there's the guy with 4 reciprocal bursts in his deck, right?
Yeah.
And whatnot, but also just to have a thread that makes it successful if I don't see that string of cards.
Yes.
So it's like you weave in a second piece, which for me really, so my first character I played was Nomu, and I just kept trying to win with Nomu, and I couldn't do it. And then a guy showed up the next week, Larry. He showed up and he just beat me with Nomu immediately, and I was like, forget it, I'm done with Nomu. I couldn't do it. And then I went to Kirishima 1 before he was nerfed, and he was just amazing and just felt like you were saying the yardstick. He was just the thing you had to try to beat. Then they clearly nerfed him. And then I really went on to Jiro, and that's who I was playing a lot of. And she's still kind of there. And I always felt like she really had that sense of like, I could be playing these specialized sound waves. I could do these home run comets. I could do the 0 gravity lifts. She had all these paths to win and beat you. You didn't need to see one set of things.
Yeah, and even
if
you,
a lot of fun.
Yeah, Jiro is great. Even if you look at the HLC deck lists, like there was so much diversity among them, so much diversity of not just like the attacks they played, but like kind of their approaches to the game. Like in the finals, we saw the instant explosive release deck that was really kind of like a snowball, kind of like a lot of small moving parts aggro deck. But then there were others that were playing pillar swing. There were others that were, I know one of them actually had just 10 attacks in the sideboard, so it could just change up its attack lineup depending on what it thought you were, how he thought you were going to react to what he did in game 1 and 2, which I just thought is freaking sweet.
Yeah,
and is so hard to necessarily prepare for and adapt against.
Yeah, no, that was definitely a neat part. So what was your path? Do you remember the characters? You don't have to remember the people, but do you remember the series of heroes that you fought on day 2?
On day 2, yeah, I played round 1. I was actually the streamed feature match against Chris Bromley's Eraserhead deck. There was a Death Eraser deck that I thought was really sweet, almost like a joke. I was on his podcast last week, and he was asking, he had a bunch of other folks on, and was asking them like, what's your deck of the weekend? And they all said Eraserhead. That Eraser deck was really awesome. It was a really cool, really different take on Eraserhead than anything we've seen. Then I played the mirror match against Tim Keefe. I played against Recovery Girl in the round of 8 by Cody, who's the last time I would not attempt to pronounce, especially because it's not in front of me right now.
No worries.
And then in the top 4 against Dan Nelson, and in the finals against Phillips Jiro. And Dan Nelson was playing Tokoyami, so Eraserhead, Midnight, Tokoyami, Eraserhead, Midnight, Recovery Girl, Tokoyami, Jiro.
Okay, so that's 5 different characters that you fought, correct? Was there a repeat there?
Headset connection here.
Can you hear me?
What the heck?
I'll try to keep talking. So Kevin's working on that. So while he gets that, so yeah, you could see that there was a lot of different heroes. There were 6 different Jiros that showed up out of those 32. I'm trying to remember the other characters that were highly represented. Nothing?
Oh.
Can you still hear me?
All right, sorry. Yeah, I'm on Bluetooth, and my Bluetooth just decided to turn itself off. But I'm back now, so I've been able to hear you for since I started making funny faces.
I figured I was talking over you, just fill in the space while you were doing that. So no, I didn't ask you any questions.
Okay, good.
But I do know. So there were 6 Jiros represented. I'm trying to remember. Was Ojiro the other one that showed up? Or is it
I know
Toki?
I
Oh,
know
it's
there were
Tokiyami, right?
yeah I know Tokoyami and Eraserhead had multiple entrants. And there was a great diversity of Eraserheads as well, because I know there were two on the Death deck, there were two on Void decks that were distinct from each other and distinct from my deck on day one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a startlingly diverse field, and I wonder how much of that was, yeah, and but yeah, startlingly diverse in any case. A lot of random one of characters. Jiro being like a fifth of the field isn't really even a remarkably high penetration, and she wasn't considered as the best deck going into the weekend either.
Right.
She did not have a lot of excellent results in any of the nationals tournaments. I mean, she had good results, to be sure. Like she got into finals and North American Nats, but no first place, no crowns, no championships.
Yeah. She's just always that threat, right? She's always that imminent threat of just, she can probably survive something that you throw at her, and she can probably throw enough damage at you.
Yeah, she's a perennial contender, right? Like I always think of kind of one of my heuristics for the game, right, is that any given turn you can fail on one of two axes. You can either not have enough damage or you can fail your control checks, right? And Jiro's scaling ability, where she gets more damage for every card in her card pool, really just means she will never not have enough damage, right? Unless you're like 20. If I was at full, like in game one of the finals, if I was at full and missed my kill and was completely shields down, she might draw her hand 6 cards off the top and not be able to kill me. That might be possible, but it'd be like 50, like flipping a coin at best, right? For her to miss that. And then as the game goes longer, right, you get the specialized sound wave stuff, and then those are like very very hard to stop, especially with then like electric jolt or like shock treatment kind of backup to like interact with your opponent. Anything on top of just the raw damage numbers she can add to the table just makes it even more likely for her to confirm that kill.
Yeah. So she's one of the things I thought was interesting that I was seeing, what I felt like was a lot of, maybe it was a perception though, was a lot of, especially in your finals game, characters that could gain momentum on the turn they wanted to use it.
So momentum's a super powerful resource.
Both of you were doing that, and that's very interesting because, I'll say I'm used to it, or just we are used to, you gain momentum and then you have it, and now it's a threat for the next turn. But you were both able to generate, and the Monster Blast, that was the card that Philip was playing? Is that what it's called?
I think it was Instant Explosive Release.
Instant Explosive Release, thank you.
The one, if your first attack connects, you get it immediately to momentum after it resolves.
I had never thought of that. And then doing a throw where it auto connects, and then you can do that one and toss it in. Like, that was a really good way to build momentum immediately, to be able to use it, especially for something like Specialized Sound Waves, which use a momentum to basically tutor 2 cards, right?
Yeah, for sure. Deck. Yeah, super powerful. And also, I know he had a couple copies like here and there of Home Run Comet as well. So that momentum could either be the sound waves, or it could be the backup plan of spending for powerful keyword on Home Run Comet, or either or both, right, the same turn potentially.
Nice. All right, and somebody says, hello, grats to you on your win.
Thank you, Chad.
It says Christine Plano, but I think it's actually Larry. Larry Plano plays at our store and whatnot. And he likes the unicorn. Actually, my dog is right here too. This is Isabel.
Oh, look at that.
She's just sleeping there. So nice. Yeah, congrats. So I thought that was an interesting part. So I don't want to spend the whole time on the HLC, but I do have one other question. And like I said, I linked in the comments below for people. Sorry, in the video description, you'll see a link to the video where Sam on Ace Maneuvers goes over, or Orange Card, Blue Card, I think is the podcast. And Kevin, they go over both the day 1 and day 2 decks, the Eraserhead deck and the Midnight deck. So for those of you who are looking for more in-depth, go for it. But in the final turn of game 3, and maybe you don't remember, you checked a 3. You do remember, for your opening attack, which I can't recall what it is now. I haven't watched it in a little while.
I think it was Indiscriminate Shock. It was the big load dunk, right?
You're right. I'll allow you to remember that correctly. That's what it sounded like. So it's interesting when you check that 3, which means now you have to commit some foundations. What's your thought process? Can you go back those 8 or 9 days and remember what made you go all in?
Yeah, so it was a really interesting turn. My hand was kind of poor. And I was very kind of feeling tentative about where I was going. I had a bunch of good resources to be able to do something. My opponent's position was relatively fragile, We'd had kind of a relatively long game at that point, kind of footsies back and forth. I've got an electrical momentum. He had a pretty wide staging area with a lot of foundations. And I thought, maybe I'll have a chance to win this turn. He's got a lot of life left, but I have some big dunks in my deck. And my hand was full of a lot of foundations. And so I think really the other part of my mind was I just wanted to play an attack, maybe get some more stuff in, see how the turn developed, and also critically get to draw some cards. So I had both the Schiller's Competitor, which is kind of low-key one of the most important cards in that Midnight deck.
Sure.
That just said we both get to draw a card. And from kind of once I conceptualized that card in the deck, it was always already very exciting to me just because it's symmetrical. We both draw a card, but that card is worth so much more in my hand than it is in your hand because it's hard to pass a block, right? You're drawing one card off the top. If it is a 3-block modifier, you can't play it. It's useless to you. Where I get to then draw that card, if it's not a card I like, I can then discard it to Midnight Cycle. So I wanted to see how I could improve my hand. My foundations were kind of medium quality in my hand. And, I checked a 3, and that's kind of the cost of doing business. You check a 3 sometimes. And then I did my, he did Zero Peak, and then I cycled away like 4 cards, holding, I think I held another foundation. I had like one more foundation in my hand. But then I drew, and I found a Summon Dark Shadow, another high attack, and a Home Run Comet. And kind of the gears turned pretty quickly to say, well, how big is this Home Run Comet? And, again, the heuristic is how much damage can this deal? And I realized, well, Home Run Comet with a couple Friends of Animals I could fetch for it. This could be 20 damage. And so if he would have to block both of my attacks prior to that to be able to defend that Home Run Comet. And I looked down and I saw, oh, well, I have an Electric Jolt for his speed reset, and I have 1 with nature to add 2 to his block modifiers. And so it'll be very hard for him to pass 2 blocks this turn. Even if he, had the perfect zone, if my hand was face up, it would be very hard for him to chart out how to actually successfully block 2 times. And I knew this 1.3 million volts that I was leading with could be pretty intimidating. And ultimately, and so with that in mind, I said, I think this is going to be this has a good chance of winning the game right now. I'm going to start tapping his cards that both adds damage to my 1.3 million volts right now and also lowers his chances of passing those blocks. He played a partial block, and I thought, okay, this is all but certain right now. And my mind started going to, well, what could he conceivably have? So at the very end of that turn, I'm like blowing up my shock treatment just to make him commit 1 of each of his cards to try to make it so that he would fail a plus ultra if he had it in his hand. I don't think he had it in his deck, but I realized that was one card that could be scary to me. It could give him a chance to remain a conceivable out to be able to not lose the game. And so, I just calculated. First up, it was a poke turn to see how things developed. I got a relatively good draw. One of the really hard things with Midnight is you make so many decisions where the outcomes could be, honestly, 0th percentile to 100th percentile. Perfect would be 2 Summon Dark Shadows and 2 Home Run Comets or something, or 2 more 1.3 million volts and a Dark Shadow Ruin or whatever.
Yeah.
Who knows how good that is? And then the bottom floor would be 5 bad foundations. And in the middle, there's this huge spectrum. I don't know where in that middle spectrum I got, but it was good enough, clearly. There's still a lot of reason under unknown circumstances with the deck that you have to be able to make an educated guess on. But so I didn't know how things were going to work out. I checked the 3, and that was kind of business as usual. That's going to happen sometimes. It's unfortunate. Happens a third of the time or less. But then the rest of what developed that turn was more in my favor.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was exciting to watch. The first game was just a turn 2 kill, right?
The first game was a miracle, yes.
So that's when those come about.
That's kind of the beauty of the Midnight deck is that it can't the Summon Dark Shadow Ruin stuff, that it has the nut draw to be able to do that. Because from my point of view, we talk about that spectrum of variance, right? And there's no way to have a consistent game plan that says I can survive anything on this spectrum. The worst cases are always going to be worst cases. You can rarely survive those. But even your opponent, my opponent had I had a bad turn 1. I had a 3 build, which is kind of below par. My opponent had a 6 build, which is insane, but expended resources. He didn't have very many cards in his hand. And then I was fortunate to draw a hand full of attacks and then check 3 running 5s to be able to convert the win. With 3 running 5s with the right attack zones, where I had 2 low attacks against his only high block.
Right. Yeah, we should quickly mention, not we're going to go through all the characters, but the abilities on Midnight's character. So correct me, one of them is exhaust and commit and decrease or increase the speed of the current attack by its number of keywords.
Yes. So
does
you
it also
commit
add taunt?
No, so one of our foundations adds taunt, which is kind of secretly super strong and secretly actually against Dan, who's playing Tokiami. That card easily excited is kind of a staple in Tokiami decks because it says it's a zero diff and he loves zero diffs, and then it adds taunt. But against Midnight, it's less effective because it gets taunt, and then that taunt is a -1 speed penalty if I want to block it. So yeah, that speed ability is super interesting because you don't always want to use it, and it's sometimes the threat is more powerful than the activation. Committing one foundation effectively adds one difficulty to all of your attacks on offense. And if your opponent wasn't trying to block necessarily, then you're just throwing away resources that you might need to defend yourself. But then on defense, it's a strong defensive ability. A lot of attacks get slowed down a lot to the point where you can pass. Just like it's very hard to force an attack through against Midnight if she doesn't want to get hit by it. And so if I can correctly predict your attack zones, where your biggest attacks are going to be, it's very hard to actually. And Midnight also has just 28 life, so it's very hard to kill her.
Right. And I apologize. I think it's commit a foundation to get that ability, right?
Yes. Okay. You can do that on every attack.
Because her other ability is commit, discard any number of cards, draw that number of cards. Is that correct?
Yep, that's right.
Right. Yeah, so that's the one where she commits, and then once she's committed, she can't use the other ability.
Well, she's special, so her second ability is playable while committed. So usually you have the choice of one or the other, but she gets, I don't know.
Wow, I'm really seeing her power now. Now that I'm having to actually say it out loud, having not been able to play it. So then you can commit those friends with animals, which give it +2 additional speed, right? Is it also -2 speed, or is friends with animals only plus
it's
speed?
Only +2 speed. If you played on the void symbol, you could play gotcha, which kind of does have that plus or minus synergy. It's a zero diff and is +1 or -1 more speed on top of it. So that synergy is out there. And actually there's a hot one of in my deck that has fluctuated to more copies sometimes, of Spirited Referee. And that says when it's committed, you get 2 damage or -1 damage. And so kind of give you a little bit more gas on your attack turns, just to be able to actually count your opponent's life total. And then also occasionally you'll just use it. I'll say, give your deck -3 speed and -1 damage, and then I won't block it. I'm just happy to have taken 1 less damage. So sometimes the margins can be that small, where that comes up. That really matters on defense.
Nice. Well, yeah, that's awesome. I was intrigued that there was a complete lack of Kirishima too.
I'm not sure if I'm surprised. I'm a little surprised. I was a little surprised. Yeah. He certainly got nerfed, but I know a lot of people have said that I don't think the nerf is that. It's certainly a substantial nerf. It's certainly impactful. But I think, already he was merely competitive against the field we had. We saw Tokoyami taking down all these nationals events, even with so many Kirishimas in the brackets playing it. And I know a lot of Kirishima players said I have a good Tokoyami matchup, but there's also a lot of Tokoyami players who aren't necessarily all at the same level of expertise with the deck. So who knows really?
Sure.
And just people didn't want to bet on a hobbled horse in this field that want. And I love a lot of people were innovating with characters like Death Arms and stuff, and
Midoriya
playing 7-hand size characters to try to have a little bit less variance going on, I guess.
Nice, cool. Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Great job. I wanted to actually take it a step back and just have you talk through. You played Universus, correct? You've played for a while.
I'm what they call an old head these days.
Because you've won. Somebody said you won championships in every format. How is that? Why don't you tell us your history with UFS?
Yeah, so I've been playing. The little pre-interviews, I said, I started playing when my brother got into the game. I can say on this stream that I couldn't. They told me not to say on the HLC interview that I started playing because of Soul Calibur in the UFS way back in like 2007 or 8, I guess. We were big Soul Calibur fanboys. The character designs, just really, really cool character designs. And we used to go to Timeout Arcade at the mall all the time and let's blow $5 playing Soul Calibur until finally got a home release. And we did that all summer instead. So I got into just because of that, and then that was kind of one of my big social outlets for in the tail end of high school and into college. and I was playing a lot. And then I started traveling around 2013. I went to Gen Con with some of my friends, and kind of really caught the bug then, because I managed to kind of brew up a new deck around one of the champ cards they made for the character Mike Lowe. That ended up being kind of a metagame pillar after a little while, and got second at the nationals after that. I remember I went on a 6-0 run in teams at Gen Con, and then our team didn't advance though, because we had, my two teammates picked up a bunch of losses. I actually beat the world champion in Swiss at Gen Con that year, Keenan, who ended up going on to win it. And that really lit a fire into me to start traveling more and start playing the game more seriously, I guess. And then for a while, I didn't actually. So after a while, a couple of years, I went up to Canadian Nationals. Actually, I guess the first one was I went to Canadian Nationals in Montreal, and won my first team card, Millennium Games and Hobbies, with Sean and Christine, who were two. Sean actually is Rochester CCG now. And they were my teammates for that little bracket. I actually borrowed a deck from the guy who beat me in the finals of the first tournament I made finals of, from Garrett Brett, who is a storied legend in his own right at this point.
Sure.
But then I actually, going back to Garrett, then I beat him, I think the following year in Canadian Nationals, which was then held in Winnipeg. It was a big adventure up there. I flew to North Dakota, and then we drove the rest of the way.
Nice.
And then that was my first singles card, Kevin Broberg 1-dot. After I guess I haven't. Oh yeah. So I guess I have kind of won every format, because they had standard, they had teams, they introduced extended, which is now kind of what we call a retro. Extended was they had a standard rotation. They kind of had extended it back to I guess not getting too many details, but they introduced an extended format. They had a small tournament for a champ card with that. And I actually played. I lent out 2 decks, one to my friend Tim Keefe and one to another of my friends, Tom Ra. I beat Tom in the round of 4 for the going into the finals of that, and then beat Tim in the actual finals of the extended tournament. And that was to win the champ card Bring Your Friends, rather. I beat Garrett to win a legacy champ card with a deck he lent me, and I beat him in the finals.
Oh no.
And this was at Gen Con in 2016, 2015, 20 something. During the Jasco era, anyway. All my achievements have really been under Jasco. UFS in the broad swath of things was under Sabretooth Games kind of briefly at start. Transferred to Fantasy Flight Games, and then Fantasy Flight discontinued it, and Jasco picked it up and then kind of resuscitated it. Then after those tournaments, then my most recent champ card, I think at this point, was Kevin Broberg 2-dot that I won by flying to UK Nationals across the pond. And I went for 2 years in a row for that. Did I win the first one? Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. So I won the first one with a Psyche deck that we called the Pillow Fort that I really loved. Really funny deck. It was a 7-hand size, 19 health character whose ability costs 2 life every turn. It was a first form, pay 2 life, but you got to fetch an asset out of your discard pile. And then they printed an asset that said, when I leave your stage, you have to add the top 2 cards of each player's decks to their card pool.
Gotcha.
So that was the Pillow Fort. If you attacked me, I would say, go to the fort, put 2 pillows in your card pool, and we would be it'd be slapboxing at the Pillow Fort.
Right.
It'd be very hard to actually, defeat, even though I was at 10 life the whole game.
Got it.
Really cool wall deck. But then Mortal Kombat came out, then Cowboy Bebop came out, and Mortal Kombat came out, and I had some middling success on the PTCs and whatever, but largely didn't put many results on the board until My Hero format. And then I happened to win the first online provisional, and had some good results at various regionals and stuff, and then leading up to the Hero League Championship.
Nice. So what would you, obviously there's a big history there, and something for people who are just playing My Hero. I mean, a lot of the players at our store are jumping in with My Hero, essentially myself included. Like I said, I played about a year before with somebody else's decks, with Larry's decks actually, who's here. and whatnot. And I definitely enjoyed the game, but I don't think I don't think I saw it without building my own decks, and even playing a variety of decks is really what helps you to see the game in a weird
Yeah.
way, right? If you just
And I
tell
think,
somebody play my one deck, they're not really going to see the game, I don't think.
yeah, and especially in the old universes format we had, back in 2020, and so things had gotten very weird. Like a lot of things were just very, very powerful effects, very game warping effects, and some of the basic rates on, just like what's 2 speed worth, what's 2 speed cost to put or remove from an attack, were just so low for a lot of these basic effects that your opponent either cared about it, and if they said, I want to not get hit by attacks, they can put like minus 30 speed in their staging area. And
Gotcha.
you can't outspeed them. It doesn't, you can try, it's not going to work unless you're doing like an infinite combo or something. But conversely, then you'll play against people who aren't doing that and don't and have some other way to defend or some other game plan to approach the game. And it'll just be radically different across the spectrum. And now things are a little bit more tuned into a kind of a sane level. There's still a lot of differentiation between decks, to be sure.
But it feels like a numbers game again, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a little bit you're not playing effects to cancel effects or whatever. Like,
yeah, and
you're playing the numbers a little more.
The matchups are a little less absurdly polarized than they were sometimes in the old universe's paradigm.
So what would you tell people to encourage them to do tournaments and traveling and whatnot? I mean, obviously starting with something like a local store, moving to a provisional that's in your area, but what are the benefits? What's the joy? Obviously camaraderie and prizing, and go through kind of all that stuff for people who are maybe looking to take that next step on traveling to some things.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously it depends on what you value, but a lot of our community is incredible. I remember I have too many anecdotes to even choose one about how wonderful our community is, but everyone's really great. Which we have just participating on the forums, participating in Discord, posting your deck list, getting talk about that. Everyone's really nice, I guess. I don't know, that's kind of hard to quantify as a minor celebrity, but
well,
they're very welcoming.
On the internet of all places, people are very nice compared to how they could be, right?
Yeah, and as a competitive player, certainly I think traveling is incredibly valuable in this game because the skill ceiling is so high, and getting exposed to games with stronger players. With I don't think I'd be here if it weren't for my local scene with Tim Keefe and all the other Ryan Field and all the other super story players who really get the game and can really test. Like you sit down across them and they test your deck. They beat you up. I mean, he's saying put you to the test. I'm not saying like we like grind 7,000 matchups to figure anything out, but they do good. They have game plans. They can adapt to what you're doing, and they can find your weaknesses and make you do something really good to be able to earn your wins. And when you're starting out, it's really hard to deduce what's going on in the game. It's really hard to unpack all the things that are going on, and just getting exposed to more people with more experience, being able to ask them questions and say, well, hey, so like I lost, but did you notice any mistakes? Were there any big holes in what I was doing? You saw that can be incredibly valuable and incredible learning experience. Certainly we have tons of promos, tons of prizes. I really love the prize wall system they set up at the HLC, and they've said that's going to be something going forward where you can play in the main event, obviously, and get the rewards potentially for high finishes in the main event. Then also, even if you watch out of that, you can then play in side events, you can play in sealed, you can play in standard, and earn prize wall tickets that can then convert into promos or figurines or whatever on the prize walls. Then I think that's really cool, exciting, really cool.
Yeah, I have some Gen Con promos. I have the meteor showers.
Those meteor showers are gorgeous.
Yeah, and then I have the play mat that goes with it.
Yeah.
And I basically traded just to get meteor showers. So I was giving up. I don't know that I was giving up 2 for 1. I'm not saying anybody took advantage, but that's what I wanted to go home with. I didn't play in as many events. Tournaments are a little bit. I'm not that I'm not a tournament player. Like it's fine, and I'm not. But that competitive edge, it's a little hard for me. But I really do enjoy it in this. I did play in the teams tournament. And like you said, everybody was very nice, and it was like, oh, don't forget that you're checked. You get a +1 speed. Like people were not trying to like gotcha, which was nice for somebody that's a little bit newer and a little bit. I don't know. I'm not a shy person, so saying I'm shy is a weird thing to say. But just I'm a little more intimidated in tournaments than like a casual thing. So
Yeah, no, and I mean, kind of a personal belief of mine. Like, I don't think you can actually play this game as a hyper competitive rules shark and actually like get anything out of it, kind of. And just there's so much going on, so many like priority paths you have to negotiate with your opponent, that actually trying to do that with like the maximum cutthroat edge, like it will drain you faster than you can derive an edge from doing it.
Right.
And kind of it's actually necessary to have some level of rapport, have some level of understanding with your opponents, in order to just negotiate the game in a timely fashion. And like, I think a lot of people kind of I think I'm better at clock management than a lot of people. I think I'm, some of that's just experience of knowing what I'm doing and how I want to negotiate the game. But I don't get a lot of draws, and there's a lot of people who end up with like 3 or 4 draws at a lot of tournaments. And I wonder if some of that's the level of communication, the level of, I don't know. Being less nice is not necessarily to your advantage, I guess. That's the punchline.
One of the things I love with our local, like what'll happen tonight, is we're kind of like, hey, we're playing at 6 and our tournament's at 7. And then when the tournament ends, even like people will be playing on each end of that tournament. And I love that vibe. So, we get to whatever it is, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and Tuesdays are pretty quiet at our store. It's a relatively busy store in general. There's a lot of role playing going on. So we hear the role playing people in the other room, right? But we finish up our tournament. People get their promos. At this point in the season where people have a lot of things, they start trading immediately because, I have too many of these. You have that. Let me finish off mine. And then people just pick up other decks and start playing. Like, okay, I just played that one for 2 or 3 games in a row. So, hey, I'm going to take out my, Eraserhead deck, or let me play your Mandalay deck and see how it's going. And everybody starts playing each other, laying out their decks and helping each other build. And I love that joy. Like, really, we do the tournament obviously for the pro, and it kind of defines you're playing these 3 people tonight, or these 2 people, however many rounds we do.
Yeah.
So it gives everybody a timer and like, oh, we're all done. Let's all shift. You know what I mean? Less than like, we need to have a tournament to get people out here or whatever. But I really love those. I love those 2 ends where people are there and they're building decks and they're talking through things and trading, or like we have a box at the store, so people are flipping through for cards, that they might need to add and everything. And I love that like community vibe of it. Is really fun. It's almost because it's a smaller game, it has more of that.
Yeah, it
smaller
really is,
game. It's definitely not small, but
no, I see. When you have 100 Magic players in the store, it's a little harder to have like. I think isn't the number like you can have like 50 people in your like close circle of friends, and then much over that you start. People start like it just starts falling out of the other side of your brain.
Right.
And so getting to know everyone, and I love that. The skill ceiling for the space for skill expression in this game is like limitless. Perfect deck that's perfectly tuned to your preference and how you see the game, how you approach the game it can never be achieved no matter how hard you try, but you can always get a little bit closer. And so that's the best part of the game, and getting to do that with your friends. I think is frankly the biggest upgrade for me in the My Hero format over what we used to have in Universes, where there was a certain rule that we don't have to get into that just made it a lot harder to collaborate with your friends. That put a limit on how much you could work on a deck together with someone and then both succeed with it. So there's a price. The trade-off of that is that sometimes we'll have a tournament or a format that has 14 Kirishimas in the tops, but that's just the result of a lot of folks playing the game and trying to do the best with what they love. So.
Nice. So let's move a little bit to the format. So I actually have a big question, which is Mineta 2. Whenever somebody runs Mineta 2,
what about? Yeah.
It's rough. He's harsh, but I don't see him on a competitive level. And I'm intrigued. I started to learn to like build foundations, don't poke, build foundations, and you really have to have a turn. But I still got smoked the last time I played Mineta 2.
Mineta 2 is a character with such a low-key insane pedigree, and I don't have a good narrative for why. I've struggled to explain why Jiro had struggled to explain like a story of a match with Jiro. I play against Jiro and I say, if you ask me like, well, Kevin, what had happened in that game? Why did it come out the way it did? I say, I can't tell you. I don't know. I did my best. They did their best, and someone came out on the other side. Mineta has a little bit of that going, right? Where he is just a brawler. He just fights you the whole game. He never necessarily gives an inch. And the different thing between Zero and Mineta is that there are cards that are very clearly very good against Mineta. And if you say, like, look over the last season of regionals, there's a very obvious answer for why did Mineta not have more results. Because he was actually the Swiss champ in the very first regional with set 2. With actually HLC competitor Andrew Duvale playing Mineta, but then he got paired into me, and I was playing Lifo Chaco with Create Capture Net. And so if he puts a card in my card pool, I say, "Hey, cool, thanks. I'm going to put that back in my stage now," and kind of get to bully him that way. And then later in the season, that same kind of vibe of Momo's cards that says, "Hey, take this weapon foundation from your card pool." It turns out her character is very good against Mineta. And we saw a couple different tournaments where Mineta had a deep run and then ran into Momo in single elimination and couldn't take it down. And as kind of Momo's kind of falling out of the meta too, this is certainly an opportunity for Mineta, I think. Mineta is a scary deck. He's hard to beat. And in a weird way, kind of the way you beat him is just having the ability to stay persistent. Just be able to say, we're going to play a 5-turn game. We're both going to be attacking and blocking. And, cards like Passing the Torch and cards like Coping with Number 1 even. Any cards that can fight over his momentum can be a huge swing. Just like having a card like Making a Stand in your deck can be a huge difference because he will poke you. And even if you have to, you have to throw or whatever, you can get that momentum. But then if you can take that away on a turn where he was depending on being able to draw that card and reset your speed, that can create an opening. And also, actually, probably another part of the Mineta story was just that the card Forcing Surrender was in a lot of these Earth decks. And if they, set up, Kirishima, a lot of them were, setting up to be able to have one big turn to finish the game. And if Mineta says, well, I'm going to keep chipping away your staging area here and there, like nom nom nom, like biting your ankles and taking away your face downs out of your stage, which is -1 each turn. But then on the big critical mass turn, like Kirishima would attack. Mineta would say, hey, put a card in your card pool, and he would say, well, Forcing Surrender, get this out of my card pool, and now I'm going to go off uncontested. Just like there's a lot of little things you can do to earn a lot of mileage in the Mineta matchup, but you still have to be able to play a long game. You have to be able to work through a lot of roadblocks he's going to put in your way. You just have to be able to have a certain level of technology to take them off the table, and also a certain level of just force to be able to just ram through them.
Yeah, he feels less about, like we were talking about, numbers, and he feels more about effects, right?
Yeah,
because he's going to make your numbers irrelevant, right? He's going to put throws, which makes your blocks, and then he's going to reduce your speed to 0, and then he's going to pull your cards up, so you're not going to have the numbers of foundations.
One match I was actually very worried about my Mineta matchup with Midnight. I had not tested it, and you have one really good trick after sideboards where you can play Somnom. You play Somnambulism, which says Midnight Enhance, commit your opponent's character, and that makes Midnight. That takes a lot of juice out of Midnight's sails. But it doesn't actually win the game on the spot, right? He has 30 life. He can probably still pass a block. That block might be like a break or 2 or a cheerful uppercut, just to make your life even more miserable.
Right.
And if you have to OTK him from full through interaction, even with the Somnom leadoff, it can be very hard still. And in the meantime, Midnight doesn't really like getting poked. She has 6 cards to play with each turn, and she doesn't really have good ways. She doesn't have a pass lunch to be able to get more. And so if you're spending a card blocking, you're losing a foundation from your stage, and you're trying to do anything with your hand, you're trying to sculpt, you're running out of cards real fast. And if he gets, like, Mineta's in the driver's seat in a game, it is really hard to dislodge him. And that's kind of actually one of the weird secrets of Mineta is that he actually is a lot better going first. He's a lot better with that little tempo advantage that just compounds on itself over the course of the game. And being behind the 8-ball there, you really have to be able to hit back in that game. You have to find both the little edges from the tech pieces, and then also have some good draws, have some really good turns come together to be able to claw that game back.
Yeah, he's always been an interesting one. The other one I'll ask you, actually, I should ask from the chat here. So Shansa09 is here and says there's a surprising lack of Tokiyami, which there were 6.
He was well represented, but
I guess the way he really puts damage and speed together, it's impressive.
No, Tokiyami is a really good character. He certainly has a pedigree. He got 2 cards banned and didn't miss a beat, really. Like, he was co-Swiss champ with me effectively in day 1. From national champion Barrett Bryant going back to back, wins one single elimination bracket, goes 4 wins in the next Swiss bracket of the HLC, then faltered a little bit on day 2, thanks to a Jiro matchup going as player 1. Well, Jiro, who got to main deck 4 ready set goes, knowing she was going to go second in 2 games,
right.
was able to break serve in that match.
That makes sense. Yeah, those are strong cards.
Tokiyama ends up with a lot of competitive matchups. He's hard to just completely count out because his force is so big, right? He has such big numbers. He gets to draw a lot of cards and see a lot of resources and just turn a lot of gears over. So he can stay in a lot of fights.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let me ask you, on that front, do you feel like, and I always hate sounding very but like, do you feel like there's a too big of a first player advantage?
It's
obviously when you're playing Swiss and you're playing a best of 3 and all that to seed yourself there, you're trying to get that advantage, which makes sense to me in something like an HLC. But it feels like they've tried to do a lot. There was a time where you could attack on turn 1, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So they've changed a lot of that. Do you feel like, Larry's going to love me for asking this, do you feel like if the second player could attack, that would change anything?
I mean, it would obviously change something. Would it change it in a healthy, good direction? I don't know, really. Right? Like attacking as player 1, attacking as player 2. I mean, you can attack as player 1 if you want to say, I'm ahead and I'm going to roll my dice on a 60-40 or whatever, right? Probably better odds. Let's say it's 1 in 4 to check an attack, right? Which is an unusually low attack count somewhat, but let's say 1 in 3 is, I think, a fine number. Let's say it's 1 in 3. Your 1 in 3 just lose the game, right? To skip your turn, which puts you pretty far behind, right? We're talking about player 1 advantage. Skipping your turn, you're giving up your player 1 advantage and then some. Is the advantage too big? I think it's a function of matchups, right? I think that's the kind of the thing that makes it very hard to discuss in concrete terms. Especially as we start saying, well, let's like tweak the rules this way or that way. One of the last things we did before the My Hero card game was I helped I was commentating some tournaments with Rochester CG hosted online where we introduced player 2 rules that ultimately kind of got adopted and mutated form. We said player 2 gets to draw 2 cards at the start of the game. And we scaled that back down to just 1 card because it felt a little bit too warping. But in the extreme, the person who wins the dice roll gets to choose who goes first. So if they're in a matchup where both characters prefer to go second, they can just say, I'll go second, you get to go first. And you have, because player 1 is a higher variance position, right? You only get 1 mulligan. It's not a partial mulligan. You don't get your extra card. You don't get your review step before you start the game. And so that tempo advantage is compensated in kind of weird sideways currencies that aren't easily convertible necessarily. When player 1 is having a really good draw, and when player 1's playing a really aggressive deck sometimes, like if Ojiro gets a 5 build on turn 1 and then draws 5 attacks and checks all 5 checks next turn, like that game's going to be one-sided. It's how it is. But then if we look at the big picture of the numbers, you might see that player 1 is like a 60% to 40% favorite, or like a 55-45. And those are kind of, I think, good, fine places to be in the aggregate.
Yeah, we find a lot of turn 2 kills still and turn 3 kills. We do, so like on our nights, we're playing a lot of single matches. We're not doing best of 3 often just because you want to play everybody and get around. We found it was better. It was better for people to not feel like they were there till 10 o'clock at night if they needed to kind of get somewhere for the tournament, but also just when we play each other, some people will sit and do a best of 3 if they're kind of playing quick. But we'll kind of get up and play somebody else just right on a Tuesday night. You're just trying to see everybody and get a chance.
I think there's a lot to be said for kind of a more league oriented format. We're just going to kind of play pickup games with whoever is available versus necessarily having a strictly structured play a 1 hour match with sideboards for this game. And play a 1 hour match with sideboards for this opponent. And now, that structure doesn't necessarily serve the needs of the community at a more local scale.
Right. Yeah, we're seeing Shigaraki 1 turn 2 kills. We're seeing Uraraka 1 turn 2 kills. We're seeing there are probably a lot more turn 3. Ojiro 2, obviously. More turn 3. But even when they go first, it feels like you get 1 turn. I think
that's the most natural pattern I see is that player 1 gets their turn 1 build. They get to make attacks on turn 2 that they couldn't do as player 2 right? They get to like light you up with like a 3-hit string, and if they check bad, well, it's only so bad. Or
Right.
they get just like play 2 attacks, and if you respect that they could have more behind, if the threat of the turn 2 kill is there, then they have to respect those opening attacks more. And then on turn 3, like you're at 13 life, and they have momentum, and like the game, like you're just like
Yeah.
in a hole, and there's often no way to get out of it.
Yeah.
Or it takes
That,
heroic steps to be able to have a chance to get out of it. Which actually is, I guess, one feature of the Midnight deck that I think is kind of low-key its biggest strength, is that on top of just having a lot of life and this good defensive resource, it has a bunch of tricks in its pocket to make it hard to. It has like the ceiling of its defensive game, where like I can play a Summon Dark Shadow and then get it back with Struggling with Studies, and then play it again, and then play a block on like a 15 difficulty. It's actually passable to block a 15 speed attack, even though you put all this effort into making it. I had the lucky draw to give me the chance to defend that. And that's almost its biggest strength. It can defend the short ball, and can defend the long ball, just to use the football analogy. And it's not.
Nice. I love Mei Hatsume, and I just wanted to work so bad. So I built a full-on defensive. It's all 1 and 2 checks with all the zones. All I'm trying to do is poke to draw my cards, and I just want to stay alive, going second till my really turn 4, maybe turn 3, and then just light the gas. But it is hard to stay alive with her. So I'm hoping we'll see some set 4. I know there's some really good Toga cards that have tech on them that I think can match up for her.
I didn't think of those.
I'm very excited to see if I can get Mei Hatsume to work, because I love her, and I have to go get. I'm gonna have to just buy a Floating Around My Babies. Was it from Nationals? With the artwork on it.
That art is gorgeous. I love that art.
My favorite one of all the cards. I love that character. I don't think I can go out and buy 4 of them, but I think I just need to go buy 1. It's like where I see 1, and then I'll almost put the other ones in and like have it in a little case, and when it comes out, bring it over.
Slip it on the board, yeah.
So I know we only have a few minutes, so I just want to do a little bit with set 4. Just for a couple minutes here. So is there a villain or two that you are just particularly excited about, whether it's because they're powerful or fun decks or whatever?
I think I thought about this a little bit. I think my top 3 cards are actually the 2 starter decks and then Kurogiri.
Okay.
I really like both. I really like the Smash. I really like not even like the new All Might, but the old promo Smash All Might. It says after you play a Smash, he's getting so many smashes. You could actually like play a turn where on your turn you play 2 attacks, draw 2 cards, build out. Then on their turn you block with 2 more Smash attacks. So you're functionally 10 hand size, and that seems like a ball. That seems really fun.
Is that the Gen Con promo?
I think that's it's like the Sword All Might.
Yeah. Sword Might. Yeah. I have
and
that
also
one.
I think the Ball Might alternate art is also that same text. I think. So lots of options there. I don't have a Ball Might, so maybe I don't know, email if you want to sell me one. But I think All for One is really sweet. I love that momentum swapping ability and kind of the like big stage. Like I love momentum. Momentum is my favorite mechanic in the game, and he gets to do some really funny momentum things. And really, like if you like get a bluff attack through, right? If you attack and they're afraid, like they don't have the right block zone, you get that through. Then you get to get that card back the next turn. You get to throw them and then get back next turn. It's all very cool, very fun emergent gameplay, I think. And plus, who doesn't love building a 15 card staging area and then getting +5 damage on all of your attacks? That sounds awesome to me. The third one is just Kurogiri again. So I played him in sealed, and it was really fun having all of the moving parts, right? Having the whatever attacks I check, I can play immediately. Whatever I can do to get the funny value out of it. He has a 1/6 that says if it gets RFG'd, you can play it as a form to remove from game pile as a foundation. And just the funny ways you can get that in the exile zone and then get it back, and then you just like eke out those little bits of value. You can never, kind of like Momo 1 that I was playing up for a while. He can always fetch the right block zone from his discard pile, and he also has a lot of access to special blocks. Cards like Convenient Timing is a new one that I'm really excited about. It says when you block with it, if you can spend a momentum, you give all your opponents checks -1 this turn.
Right.
So all of a sudden, if they're playing a 4-hit string, that's like Breaker 3 over that string. They don't even know how rough they have it until they've tried to play out. And if they try to back off and build foundations, those foundations are also more expensive than they should be. So they can end up overextending without meaning to, thanks to that card. So I'm really excited about all those.
Yeah, I'm excited to see defense. Like I was hinting at, a lot of turn 2 and turn 3 wins. I'd like to see some things, where it can go a lot longer. And I guess that Shigaraki looks like it might be that, just frustrate your opponent to
Yeah.
no end. It also feels like the deck you don't want to show up with to play a friendly game. Like,
Yeah.
but if you got the right person who's ready to sit across the table and just kind of experience some of that, but it's just constantly making you make 5 checks.
Well, see, if you build a deck that's trying to turn 2 someone, and your opponent shows up with a deck that's dedicated to not getting turn 2, it's your fault if you don't have that longevity to stretch that game.
That's true, yeah. But he looks like a lot of fun to me. I
He's
know
really funny, yeah.
I know Twice is getting a lot of excitement, and then I forgot the other one. Who's the gecko?
Spinner. I was gonna guess it was Spinner. Yeah.
Yeah, Spinner is the other one that you're hearing a lot of things. So it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of hype.
A lot of shake up, and kind of like set 3 was. Like set 3, so much of my midnight deck was set 3 cards. The set 4 is adding a lot to a lot of older characters. Like Mount Lady is a character I've never given the time of day to. I thought she kind of sucked, but now she's got some really nice toys, and it might be Mount Lady's time to shine.
Yeah, I've been hit with a 24 attack throw from Mount Lady, so I've been there and been like, I guess I'll block this or be dead.
I'm at 10.
Yeah, this will be fun. So awesome, Kevin. Well, I appreciate it so much. I appreciate an hour of your time and everything. Congratulations again. Good luck going forward. And we're not too far. I think I figured out we're about 5 hours apart. So yeah, sometime we'll try to catch up. Like you said, carpool one way or the other, and have a chance to play together. So sounds good.
Looking forward to it.
All righty. Oh, you there?
Stutter.
Let's skip for a second. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks everybody for joining us so much. If you have other questions and you're watching later, you can feel free to put them down below and I will try to answer as best I can. Again, go check out Kevin's interview, Sam's interview of Kevin that I linked down below, where you can get even more in depth about the decks that he played at the Hero League Championship. That's it, everybody. Until next time, I'm the Brandt, and I hope you step into the portal. Have a great day.
Good night.